This music that we just played for you comes to us from Iraq. This is a traditional folk music. It comes from a place that is the breathing ground, the place where the three religions of the Middle East came from. Abraham came from Iraq, the person that is the father of the three religions of the Middle East. And this music is so old that nobody knows who wrote it. This music is the fruit of the people of the Middle East and the landscape of the Middle East. The desert in the Middle East is a different desert that you have in North America. It has a really different feeling. And when the winds blow through the canyons in the deserts in the Middle East, there's a different sound that you hear of the winds in North America's deserts. And that desert, those canyons, those are the elements that shaped the kind of music that we have from the Middle East. Now the scale, the music that we just played, the musical scale is a very unique scale called Hijaz. So you see this, it has a very deep sense of longing and sadness in that scale. And that is the scale that we used to play the first piece that we played. And that scale, that musical notes, what is a scale? It's an arrangement of musical notes in a certain order. If you arrange the notes in a different order, it's a different scale. It may be a different scale. Or if you use slightly different notes, it's a different scale. And every scale has a different tone and a different atmosphere and a different emotion. And this specific scale is indigenous to the Middle East. You don't have that scale in Africa. You don't have it in Asia, you don't have it in Europe. And if you find it in Asia or in Africa, you find this scale only in place where there's a Muslim population. And we know that the Muslims start migrating. From the 7th century, the Muslims expanded from Arabia to North Africa, and they reached all the way to Asia. But if you go to Asia, for example, to Malaysia, and you go to the Muslim community in Malaysia, and they use this scale. But if you go to the indigenous people of Malaysia, they do not play this scale. They play music that is closer to Chinese music. Because this scale is not indigenous to Asia. And this scale is not indigenous to Africa. That is why you can find this scale and this music only in North Africa. Only when the Muslims came and they brought that music from the Middle East with them through North Africa. If you go South Africa, East, West, there's a different kind of musical scales, different kind of music that is indigenous to Africa. So this scale is a unique sound that comes from the Middle East. And then if we look at the three different religions of the Middle East, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, you find that those three traditions use this scale to express similar emotions and they use to create similar prayers. For example, one of the oldest prayers that we have comes from a Jewish rabbi that lived in ancient Israel about 150 years before Christ. And his name was Rabbi Akiva. And he made this prayer. And he made this prayer at a time when there were no rain. There was incredible drought. And all the high priests from Jerusalem came and they They did their special ceremony for the rain, special prayer for the rain, and no rain. And they brought again all the priests together, and they did the ceremonies, and they did their dances, and they did their prayers. Nothing worked. And the people start to starve. And then Rabbi Akiva just starts crying and praying this prayer that came out of him, asking for forgiveness. This prayer is used until today in Jewish synagogues every Friday night, sometimes every Saturday morning, and it's used also on Yom Kippur, the day of fasting and meditation and repentance and introspections. And this prayer is used nowadays as a prayer for forgiveness for sins. But originally, it was a prayer for rain. It was asking for forgiveness in order to bring the rain. And this prayer comes from a very deep, it's kind of a deep lament and a deep cry to something greater than ourselves. And this prayer was created in this scale, in that special musical scale that belongs to the Middle East. So we're going to play for you this prayer right now. It's called Avinu Malkeinu, and in English it means Our Father, Our King. And this prayer influenced the Christian prayers, Our Father, Our King. And this is, as I said, this is coming from 150 years before Christ, from ancient Israel. So you see, there's something unique about this scale, because it starts like this, and then it goes down, and the last three notes are these, and it gives you this feeling of whining or crying. And no other scale have those combination of notes, that wide step and a small step. And that's the unique signature of Makam Hijaz, of the Hijaz scale. And when I play this to people, they say, oh, that sounds Jewish. Yeah, that sounds Jewish. And then I play for them a song from the Christian tradition from the Middle East, and it has the same notes. And this song sounds like this. same building blocks, exactly the same notes. But this is a Christian Armenian song. And the Armenians established a very, very, very deep connection with the Middle East. The Armenians were the first nation to convert to Christianity. Before the Byzantines, before the Christians, before the Romans, before the Roman Empire, before the Byzantine Empire, the king of Armenia converted his whole nation to Christianity, and they established a pilgrimage with the Holy Land, with Jerusalem, very early on. And they had this connection with the early Christians. And the early Christians, of course, were Jews, like Jesus himself. So they carried that tradition of those kind of prayers, of using those kind of scales into prayers. So we're going to play for you now this song from the Armenian tradition that is written with the same scale, the same musical scale, and the same kind of combination of notes as that old ancient Hebrew prayers for the rain that Rabbi Akiva made 150 years before Christ. So, you see, it's played a little bit more joyfully, a little bit faster than the original Hebrew prayer, but the musical notes are the same. This is the Hijaz. Now, does this sound to you Jewish? Or Armenian Christian? Well, it's hard to tell. They're both praying with the same musical notes. And now, if we look at the Islamic tradition of the Middle East, the Sufi tradition, this is the mystical sect of Islam, they use this same scale, the Maqam Hijaz, for devotional songs that talk about the beloved. The beloved in the Sufi terminology is the divine, God, and the lover is the worshipper. The person who prays is the lover, looking to connect with the beloved. That is why the Sufi tradition is often called the path or the school of love, because they use the terminology of love, the lover and the beloved. And in love, you know, there's an element of longing and yearning. Even if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, they may go next year to a semester in England, and you're not going to see them for half a year. And you love them, and you have a love in your life, but it's still you're experiencing pain, you're experiencing lament, you're experiencing longing. And that is why in the Sufi tradition, a lot of time the music has that element of yearning and longing to reach and to connect with the lover, with the lover, with the beloved. So they use that same scale. So this is from the Sufi Turkish tradition. And again, just like with the Armenian, you feel this is a little bit different. Because of course, the Turkish Muslims and the Armenian Christians and the ancient Hebrews, Jews, are all slightly different. There's a little bit different flavor. That's what makes the world interesting. Otherwise, everything gonna be like Starbucks. It's going to be a boring world if you can buy coffee only in Starbucks all over the world. It's going to be a terrible gray world, green world. You need variety. Variety is the spice of life. So of course we want to have a difference, but if you look at the essence, and I'm looking at it from the musical point of view, from the musical research, this Turkish Muslim Sufi song, this prayer, is using the same musical blocks, the same scale as the Hebrew prayer for the rain of Rabbi Akiva and the Christian Armenian song. So it has those elements. See that whiny tone? Tone, that people hear that in music and they say, "Oh, that sounds Jewish," and I tell them, "No, but I'm playing a Muslim prayer." And some of my Jewish friends, when they hear it, they say, "No, that sounds very Jewish. What do you mean this is a Muslim prayer? That sounds just like a Jewish song that I know." I tell them, "Yeah, but it's a Muslim prayer." And then when I play some of the Jewish songs to some of my Armenian Christian friends, they say, "That sounds exactly like an Armenian song." And I said, "Yeah, but it's a Hebrew song." And the interesting thing is that this what I'm demonstrating to you right now, this is just one scale. And in the system of scales in the Middle East, there are many scales, and every scale has a different quality. And every scale is being used for different kind of prayers. For example, this scale, this is Makam Bayat. It's used a lot for folk dances. This is a scale that is used for a lot of folk dancing, and it's used in a similar way in the Middle East across religious boundaries. The Jews of the Middle East, the Christians of the Middle East, and the Muslims of the Middle East. They use that scale to create songs that serve the community in a similar way. And in the same way, there are songs that are used, scales and songs that are used for lament. They're used for very grave moments. For example, there's special scale that is used for prayers in time of the ritual of circumcision. And it's a very specific scale that is used for that. And there's scales that are used for happy events like parties and celebrations, weddings. There's a specific scale that is used for praise songs for God. And that scale, it's brighter. It sounds like this. And the communities, all those three communities, on their separate ways, they compose prayers of praise using this scale. One of the examples is Ya Ribon Olam. So you see, this is a brighter scale. It's a happier kind of a scale, and it's used specifically for praise songs of praising the divine, praising God. So if we look at this system of scales, system of musical scales, and a system of using those scales to create prayers, and you look at the three communities of the Middle East, and you see that they are using those musical scales to express similar human emotions. And if you remind yourself that music and humanity preceded those three religions. People lived in the Middle East before Judaism. People lived in the Middle East before Christianity and before Islam. And they lived in that environment. And that environment, with those humans, produced the fruit of this kind of music. The music preceded the religion. The music has nothing to do with the religion. It has to do with the geography and the people living in that geography, in that landscape. That's what makes Africa unique. That's what makes Asia unique. That's what makes the Middle East unique. It's the landscape and the people who are making a living in that landscape. Then later, they develop certain kind of religions, and the religions adapted the music that preceded them. You see? And then everybody making their own little impact. and creating the various different flavors and the richness. And of course, then the Armenian church and the Greek Orthodox church creating the unique flavor, the unique little spice that's unique for them. And the Jews of Iraq creating the special flavor with those building blocks. And the Jews of Morocco create their own special flavor. And that's how we get all this rainbow. But if you look at the differences, you're missing the main essence, that they are all the same. They are all using the same essence, the same building blocks to express their emotions. So we talked about earlier about Morocco, about how the music migrated from the Middle East with the Islamic migration. And we would like to demonstrate to you one of those songs from Morocco. This is a song that was preserved by the Jewish community of Morocco, and it has the rhythms of Africa, but the melody is more Spanish. And why Spanish? Because in the Middle Ages, the largest Jewish community lived in Spain. And 500 years ago, they were expelled from Spain, and a lot of them went to Morocco. And they brought the melodies from Spain with them to Morocco. And in the last 500 years, they lived in Morocco. And they got the African influence in Morocco. And that created a special style that we call the Moroccan Andalusi style, that has a more African rhythm and Spanish-flavored melody on top. And that's what makes that Andalusi style. Andalusi, because the south of Spain in the Middle Ages was called El Andalus, or Andalusia. And that is where the coexistence, the golden age of Spain took place. It was the largest Jewish community in the world in Andalusia, in the south of Spain, and the most advanced Islamic civilization in Andalusia, and the Christian Spanish population in Spain. And that interaction of those three communities created this music that was carried down to Morocco. So this is a song, it's a prayer called Du'or Ikra. It's a prayer about Shabbat, and it's a prayer about freedom.
אשר גברה נטות צרי באבברה שמע קולי ביום אקרא אלוהים תן במדבר הדס שיטה בראש תדע אלוהים תן במדבר הדס שיטה בראש תדע ולמזהיר ולנזהר אלוהים תן שמנה
Thank you. I would like to introduce to you our friends here on stage. This is Dror Sinai on percussion. Dror Sinai. And on ney, Eliyahu Sears. My name is Yuval Ron. I play Daoud. And before we close, I would like to invite a surprise guest who happened to be with us here today. And she plays a very, very unique and rare instrument called karta. And karta is the predecessor of the castanets. It's an instrument that was brought to Europe by the gypsies who came from India, came to Spain and brought that instrument. And we're going to play another song from the Andalusi tradition, and we're going to invite Nazanin to join us. Nazanin, please. The stairs are on the other side. By the way, if you'd like to hang around after this lecture, we're going to be at the lobby, and if you have more questions and if you have some stories to tell us and some information and some, I always learn from audience members who come to me after the show and they tell me something that educates myself. So I love meeting people after the shows and after lectures. This is one of the most enjoyable and important elements for me in my work. So please, if you'd like to stay around, please do. It's Nazanin on Karta. I wanted to thank Patricia Kimball from the music department who brought us here and did all the work to make us come. So thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you very much. Should we take questions in the meet and greet, or should we take questions here? How would you like to do it? Do we have time for more questions, for Q&A? Okay, we can take a few questions here, and then we'll take more back there. Yes. Well, I can tell you that the migration of the Middle Eastern music with the Islamic expansion went through North Africa, reached Spain, and it was in Spain for 900 years. And that music, even after the Jews and the Muslims were expelled from Spain, that music still influenced the folk music, the troubadours, the French troubadours and the Spanish troubadours, and Spanish church music. They found elements in Spanish church music that is different than German and French music, and they tied it back to the Islamic music that was in the courts in Spain. And that must have affected Fado, because that's next door in Portuguese. So it really changed that migration and into Europe, changed the history of music and culture in the whole of Europe. It's something that is not covered much in Western history books, but it's if you really dig into it, you find it was an enormous impact on the architecture, on the sciences, on the arts, on the music, on the instrument. You know, this instrument came from Iraq, from Baghdad, to Spain in the 9th century, and this is the lute. The European lute came from this instrument, and the guitar, the design of the guitar was influenced by this instrument. So it's enormous, the impact that the music made at that time. Yes, right here. I tell you, the Greek modes was carried by the Romans. Like a lot of the Greek architecture and the Greek music and the Greek culture was taken over by the Romans and brought into Europe. So the Greek modes, we know that the Greek modes were carried over into Gregorian chants, for example, that were written in the Greek modes. But the Greek modes do not correspond exactly to the Middle Eastern scales, which are called makams, and that's what we played. Some of them do, meaning there's some Greek modes that are similar to Middle Eastern modes or makams, and there are some Middle Eastern scales that do not exist in the Greek modes, because they really unique to the Middle East, and they were not part of the Greek system, you see. So the Greek modes are the foundation of the European music, but not the Middle Eastern music. You see, I hope that answers the question, because I didn't hear the whole thing. Okay, yeah. Yes, right here. Well, I was born and raised in Israel, and when I was 17, I went to the Sinai Desert to spend time with the Bedouins, and I saw Daoud for the first time there in the desert. And I was a guitar player. I was 17. I came with my guitar. I took it with me, my classical guitar, and I played classical and jazz and rock. And I saw that oud, and I sat around the fire with the Bedouins, and I just played on my guitar. And I tried to imitate the oud. And I thought in the beginning, wow, I'm creating a new sound for the guitar. I'm going to be a pioneer. I'm going to introduce a new sound. And I tried to detune my guitar to sound like the oud. And then I realized, years later, it's not a good idea. So I bought my first oud from a Bedouin in the Sinai desert, an Egyptian oud, and I started playing. And so the first thing that I learned was really from the Bedouins, and then I learned more from the Turkish musicians and different people from the Middle East that I worked with. But I grew up. It's a unique place. Israel is a unique place because it's Western and it's Middle Eastern at the same time. You know, you can. I grew up in a place where I heard on the radio Jimi Hendrix and Mozart and Arabic music. You know, all on the same dial. You know, you go on the dial and you hear Arabic stations and you hear classical stations and Western music and jazz. And so I was fortunate to have all those influences when I was young.